Hi there, and welcome to my creativity final project for Curriculum 5206 for Dr. Ruthie Manning Freeman, October of 2023. So, my intended setting and attendees, my school typically runs PD and stations. So, in that case, teachers can pick from a variety of different topics that they would like to attend. So chances are that this would be offered a few times during one school day to groups of teachers between 15 and 20. There is a chance, however, that it could also be offered for the entire school as a 1 hour PD session. Groups would include middle school core area teachers, elective teachers. Every group would have at least one administrator or counselor, and our setting would be our Learning Commons, which also has a maker's station. Here's the general outline of what we're going to be looking at. So I'm calling this Creativity Crash Course with Bethany Champlin. So again, I've reiterated our setting. Our fictional setting would be a racetrack, so props and sounds and costumes that would support a racetrack. Attendees, here's our objectives. Teachers will know that creativity can be learned, that creativity can be taught and encouraged, that creativity can be incorporated into all subject areas and disciplines. They will understand that creativity is intrinsically motivated and that the purpose of creativity is not to judge. Teachers will practice being creative when it comes to solving a problem, brainstorm ways to imbue creativity into their classroom, and creatively work as a team to build a Lego vehicle that can withstand a crash and keep a Lego person inside. So I'm using 4 different hooks here. So I will have a board message hook. There's a quote from Sylvia Plath about creativity. I will have a costume hook, which will be me dressed as a race car driver. We will have props, so traffic cones, signals, other racing elements. And then a teaser hook at the beginning. They will draw a Hot Wheel out of a bag, and that's going to help with grouping them for their pretest. So I've got my list of materials that I would need. So Legos, traffic cones, race car driver outfit, Hot Wheels, different materials that I would have GT students use ahead of time to make a U-shaped track. And I'm going to get into all of this once I get into my presentation. This is just the outline. And so I already have all of the materials that I would need. Here is the breakdown of time. It would be a welcome and take a Hot Wheel, get into groups with people with matching Hot Wheel colors and discuss a pretest question, share out their pretest answers. We would go over our objectives and agreements. I have a short video about creativity. I would cover my key points and include discussion with that, and I will get into that in the slides. We would then do our creativity activity, which is building Lego cars to withstand impact, and this time includes instruction for that. We will have a debrief, final thoughts, and an exit ticket. So the total time is between 60 and 80 minutes. I could adjust this by condensing or lengthening the build time. So let's get back to our presentation. So welcome to the Creativity Crash Course. As participants enter the room, I would greet them with different titles. Hello, inventors. Good morning, innovators. Happy to see you, problem solvers. They would be asked to pull a Hot Wheels car out of a bucket before taking their seats. Here's the quote that I would have on the board to get them thinking about creativity. The worst enemy to creativity is self-doubt, and that is writer Sylvia Plath. Here's our hook continued, costume and prop hook. So in the middle of our maker space, I would include a U-shaped track. And the idea with the U-shaped track is that once they do the activity, they will be putting down their Lego cars, one team on each side, and in the middle of the U, the cars will collide. So I've got a tip here to have GT students build it ahead of time as part of an innovation challenge for the students. And then just having various traffic cones and race car related props around the room. Upon being seated, we would go over the objectives and agreements, which I will get to next. After that, they would be asked to get into groups based on the color of the Hot Wheels car they picked upon entry. So our objectives and agreements, I went over the objectives when I went over the outline. Our agreements would be to, as a collective, approach this PD with an open mind, be willing to take risks and participate, be solution-oriented. With that one, we would probably have some discussion about what does it look like to be solution-oriented versus questioning in a negative way. I do want them to ask questions, and this is a no judgment zone, so just encouraging them to try. Here would be our pre-assessment. So each Hot Wheel color group would be given one of the following questions to discuss as a group. So they are all true or false questions. So number one, true or false, only people who do art, music, dance, or write books are creative. 2, creativity cannot be learned. 3, extrinsic rewards enhance creativity. 4, only certain classes like writing and art have reason to incorporate creativity. 5, I am not a creative teacher, so I can't teach creativity. 6, creativity is a 21st century skill. 7, creativity equals crafts. 8, there are too many standards as it is, and there isn't time to incorporate creativity into them. 9, creativity is an area of gifted identification. And 10, creativity is only creativity if there's an end product. So these are all false with the exception of 6 and 9. So I would have them discuss those and then we would share out. Here is the video that I would show them.
Everyone can be creative whether they realize it or not. A lot of people tend to think that creativity is binary. Either you have it or you don't. But in reality, we do all have it. It's just a matter of how you interpret it. You know, some people think, I'm not an artist, so I don't use creativity at work. But it's more than just artistic expression. Whether you're working in retail or you're in an office job, or even if you're a professional athlete, you're probably using creativity to make decisions and solve problems on a daily basis. Creativity is both a skill and a process. It's something you can learn. And like any other skill, it's something you can get better at through practice and repeated use. Now, you might think, well, I don't have time to sit down and create something every day. This is where it's important to realize the difference between using creativity and actually creating something. You know, in a lot of ways, creativity is all about how you see things. So yeah, you can use it to create poems or paintings, but you can also use it in practical ways, like coming up with an alternate solution for a work project or organizing things in your home. So the next time you think, I'm not creative, or I'm not as creative as some other people, take a step back and really take a look at what it is you do on a day-to-day basis. You might be surprised at how often you're using creativity.
I like that short little video because I feel like it will get them thinking about the creative process.
Everyone can be creative.
Okay, so here are the key points that we will cover. Creativity is not just doing arts and crafts, it's a way of thinking and problem solving and doing. We're going to talk about, I will ask the question, have you ever been doing something you enjoy, such as writing, something musical, working hard on a unit plan or new lesson idea, and time seemed to fade away? You may have been experiencing flow. So the theory of flow is that there are clear goals every step of the way. There's immediate feedback to one's actions. There's a balance between challenges and skills. Actions and awareness are merged. Distractions are excluded from consciousness. There is no worry of failure. Self-consciousness disappears. The sense of time becomes distorted, and the activity becomes an end in itself, or autotelic. I would then have teachers pair up probably with a different partner than who they originally paired up with for the pretest, and talk about times when this has happened in their life, or times when their students seem to have forgotten that the clock exists. And what were the students doing, and how can we purposefully recreate that? Continued key points. I want to talk about the research that I did on Teresa Amabile about her speaking about creativity being intrinsically motivated. What I also found interesting in her work is that the exception is due dates and general guidelines. And so talking with teachers about how can we help with intrinsic motivation? Well, one way we can do that is by getting rid of the extrinsic motivation and having the task as the task itself. So I will share her quote: "When people are intrinsically motivated, they engage in their work for the challenge and enjoyment of it. The work itself is motivating." And I think that it's very important for teachers to keep in mind that we need to model for our students what we expect of them. So, for example, earlier in the year when I did the puppet show, when I introduced myself for the creativity course, I showed the kids the puppet and we talked about it. And I talked about, yeah, maybe it's not perfect, but I tried and I went for something new, and they thought it was really cool that I'm in a college class and we got to do something fun like that. And so as a teacher, I will never give the kids an assignment that I would not work to do myself. And so oftentimes when they're working on projects, I'm working in there with them, or I'm creating an example to go with what we're talking about. So I think it's important that students see teachers smile and laugh and enjoy their own work. And so sometimes that might mean not complaining about teaching being work. Kids should not hear their teachers say that. So after going over our main points and having discussions, we are going to start our engines and do our creativity activity. Their goal is to use Legos and wheels to create a Lego car that ideally would be fast, but the main point is that it will withstand impact and keep their Lego person in place during a crash, hence the name Creativity Crash Course. So our criteria and our constraints, and I would pause at this point and talk about with your students, teaching them what criteria versus constraints means and using that as kind of a working model. So they must use wheels to move their car. It must be large enough to hold their Lego person. There must be a restraint to keep the Lego person in the car in the event will happen of a crash. And the goal is that your car travels down the ramp, but that when it encounters the car coming from the other side, it does not break. And so we would race crash 2 groups at a time. And once we have those winners, they would go against the other groups that won until we have our strongest, safest, hopefully fast car. Our constraints would be groups of 3 or 4, only use materials provided, so they can't add on like paper, cardboard. Their build time would be 15 to 20 minutes, and that's where we've got some flexibility. And they can test their car against the wall or other objects, but not against other groups' cars during this time. And I would also add on that the more tests they do, the more fixing they're going to have to do. So they would need to keep time in mind. So we would do that activity. And then once that was completed and we had our winners and all of that, we would debrief, talking about what went well, what were some things that were challenging, how did the group overcome those, but more importantly, how can we help our students overcome challenges? And talking about, even if they did not think they were a creative person, were they able to participate in the process? Were they able to problem solve? And one of the most important questions, I think, did you have fun? Encouraging teachers to have fun with their kids. And how can we encourage our students to reflect and problem solve after they've done an activity? So I think that this part is very important. Whoops. Because we don't want to just do something fun and then send them out with no real grasp on where to go from there. So this was fun, but how do I take some ideas? How do I take this back to my classroom? And I just went through and came up with some hands-on creative type activities and processes for each of the types of classes. I will say that our career technical education teachers do a fantastic job of already teaching the engineering and design processes. And PE and the arts, I think it's well incorporated as well. So for the core areas, we would discuss some of this. Things to keep in mind, and this would just be for the teachers to keep in mind as they try new things. Just like we ask kids to take risks, we need to do that also. I am lucky to have an administration that if a teacher says, I'm taking a risk, can you come in and observe? It may not go perfect. I've never done this before, but I'd love your feedback and what you see. Our administration is very good about coming in and not judging and giving legitimate feedback. And so I would reiterate that with the teachers. It might not go as perfectly the first few times you try to infuse creativity into your class, but that's okay. It's called a process for a reason. No one expects perfection right off the bat, or ever for that matter. Judgment-free zone, kind of tying that back to Teresa Mabile. Encouraging them to remember that I'm here to help them. I can brainstorm, co-teach, whatever they may need, and that they can be creative, and so can our kids. So the exit ticket, we would revisit our pre-test slide. We go back to that true false slide and discuss what is something that the teachers had a misconception about, and now they understand more. And then the other part of their exit ticket, what is something that you will take back to your classroom this week and try? And I would just remind them that I'm here to support them and thank them and stick around for questions at the end or ideas. And finally, here are my references. I've used Teresa Mabile, Dave Burgess, Jane Pierto, both books, and the YouTube Everyone Can Be Creative video. Thank you for your time.